Welcome to another edition of Backstory with Dr. B. I found this copy of an old photograph of my dad and my grandfather when they lived on the farm. My grandfather had my aunt, along with his wife, of course, over in Texas and Oklahoma, relocated to California during the late 30s. And my dad was born in 1941, so he's probably, like 9, maybe 10. I think they left the farm at about 11, when he was 11. We'll read about that in a minute. I've got his journal note from when he lived on the farm. So my grandfather, my dad James, grandfather Fred, I have his middle name, Edward. I'm sorry, he has his... Anyway, my middle name is after him, William. So they're standing in front of the farm, and I don't know who gets the lion's share today of this. Grandpa was quite a tough guy when he grew up in Texas and Oklahoma. He was toward the younger end of the family. I think there were like 12 kids or something like that. And he was pretty young. His mother and father had died when he was still a young teenager. And the court found that it would be better to keep the farm together. It was the largest inheritance anybody had ever had for a farm in that area at the time. And so I think all the kids got maybe $1,000, and the whole farm went to the oldest sister, who's married a guy. My recollection is that he was a good friend of the local judge, and they said, well, you know what, he gets it all. I don't know if he had a will or what the will stated, but it pays to have friends in high places. So anyway, I always thought that was a myth, and then later on, I got the actual documents. Really, the hat should be a little taller than that. I don't really see much in my grandfather's face in this shot. A lot of high contrast stuff going on here. And not a lot of clear pictures of him when he was younger. He liked to fight. Then we go to barn dances when he was courting my grandmother. And she would flirt with other men when they were dating, and then he'd get mad and get jealous, and they'd go outside and decide to have a fight about it. So everybody turned their old cars on, and park them in a circle with the headlights facing the center, sit down and have a knockdown, drag out fight, and then go back in and keep dancing and having a grand old time. It was considered fun. They like to beat up the hobos too, the bums on the side of the road, side of the street. They'd just walk by. If they were standing, they'd hit them, knock them over. That was considered good fun. Oddly enough, when I was in San Francisco, is this cigar pointing up or down? They're just coming right at you. This is Southern California, Central Valley, hence the high contrast bright light. Not a lot of cloud cover there. Not a great. Not He didn't do so great on the farm though either. His dad had a prosperous farm, of course, but you know. And a little shadow here. This is fun. All right, coming over. He was a strong guy, but he was a little guy. He was only like 5'6" or something like that. He had a 6th grade education. He pretty much was lower working class. I mean, they had pretty nice pretty nice farm back in Oklahoma and Texas. But once he left that, he didn't have any backing from family or anything like that. And he ended up hopping the freight trains and riding out to California. Another dirty Okie come looking for work. Some fruit picking work. Had big forearms. Am I going to be able to link this up? Have I set this up well enough? I destroyed that thumb. I do pretty good thumbs, too. Oh, his hand's so tiny. He looks like he has little tiny person hands. Oh, well, whatever. That's the thing about committing to pen, you know? You're right there. So what's this? 1941. He was born, he's 9, so it's probably close to 1950. And my dad loved his dad. And he thought being the eldest son was the cat's meow, man. I mean, that was like it. That was it. You were the oldest son? Oh, boy. A little fuzzy hand action going on there. Wouldn't sit still. Never could. Like to keep busy. Idle hands were the devil's tools. When I was in high school, my dad had me sign up for every doggone sport. I hated them all. I like karate, but that was my idea. He wanted me to play football. I didn't even know how to play football. He started talking to me about the the names of the players, and I'm like, this sounds kind of pornographic. Tight end, wide receiver, open end. So he's got himself a little bowl cut, probably. There's them big ears. My family nicknamed him Uncle Ears. My cousins, they always were ones for saddling somebody with an unfortunate last name, an unfortunate moniker, nickname. My grandfather could never learn how to pronounce my daughter's name, Brianna. He said Barada, and finally he just settled on Burita, and that's what he called her. He never saw my sons. Oh, wait, no, he didn't see my sons. My grandmother, his wife, did. She saw all my boys. I got a great picture of her holding my son, Andrew, my youngest. Boy, is it sunny. I remember that. I don't know how to draw a squint. I've never done that before. His nose is shaped different because he hadn't been beat up too badly yet. He'd been beat up a little bit, though. It was happening. But some of the happiest times of his life were living there on the farm. In spite of some of the weird stuff that happened. Well, that's not lined up right at all. Grandpa's hand. And that does look kind of like Grandpa's thumb. Obviously, they were a lot more gnarly by the time I saw them. Oh boy, I can't do hands today. I got this ring, I think. Or Lynn does, I'm not sure. My dad's brother, maybe. We got to come out for his funeral. And he didn't do well. He ended up moving up to West Pittsburgh, California, which is a very rather poorish, not wealthy, working class neighborhood. They've renamed it Bay Point. It's a lot rougher now than it used to be back then. And that pocket probably had some tobacco in it. I'll get to the story here soon. I don't think I'm going to do the whole body. A lot of foreshortening and stuff going on there. I'm just kind of making up squinty lines here to go with stuff based on how it seems to look. Okay. Dad's arm. I think he'd already started smoking by then. My dad. Started at 9, sneaking him under the house. He was a lifelong smoker. Then he switched to chewing tobacco. But it was too late because in his 60s, I think, he started having a lot of collapsed lungs from upper apical aspect of his lung emphysema. And be funny to see that house, if it's still up. Central Valley is probably not going to be as worth as much as it would be in the Bay Area, but if it was in the Bay Area, it'd probably be worth $750,000 because you can't afford to live in the Bay Area, certainly not as a farmer. Yeah, he didn't do so good with cash crops, but we will discover that in a second. Okay, all right, well, there's enough of that. That's probably up in there. That was rough. My grandfather has an odd, anonymous look to him. Well, we can look at that, and I'm going to read a passage Dad's journal, which he wrote. Let me see that. Yeah, December 19th, 2014. The farm years. I'm trying to remember. I was really young. Dad and Gran had 10 acres of land, I remember. The roadside of the property was lined with olive trees. Dad had a large barrel that he used to cure the olives. He put some solution in it. I think it was probably vinegar with spices. Me and Sis would just reach into the barrel and eat the olives. Most were so good, but once in a while you would get a one that tasted nasty, not fully cured yet. I still love olives to this day. I remember a large chicken house behind the house, just filled with chickens. When Len, his brother, was about 1 year old, they found him eating chicken poop. Yuck. Dad used to trade the eggs and chickens for things he didn't have on the farm. There was another large barn in the corner of the front of the house. I really don't remember what he used that for, probably storage. In the back of the house was mostly growing vegetables, tomatoes, rows and rows of them. He also planted cucumbers, radishes, squash, etc. Just about anything you could think of. I remember when we all spent days putting white caps on the tomatoes, row after row, and it was a beautiful sight to see. I don't know what that means, white caps on the tomatoes. Dad's vegetables and chickens were most of their income. The house sat kind of in the middle of the property, and it seemed huge to me, but going back after we had moved, it really wasn't big at all. It had a large living room and kitchen. I think it was a 2-bedroom because me and Aunt Freddie shared a room together. Grandpa also had a couple of fighting roosters. They must have been mean because they seemed to beat all the competition in the area. The Mexicans would come to our place with their roosters to fight Dad's. He won a lot of money from the roosters. One day I looked outside and there was a horse. I was so happy, but the next day it was gone. Another trade, I guess. We also had a cow and a pig. The cow was laying in the sun one day and I decided to climb on. Well, it startled her and she got up and I went flying into a large sticker bush. I still have a scar on my leg. Grandma would raise a pig once a year for our pork. I remember one day he wanted me to go with him to the pig pen. When we got there, he put his gun to the pig's forehead and shot her. I will never forget that day. The pig screamed and fell dead on the ground. I guess he just wanted me to see it. Mom made butter in her churn by hand, and it was so good on biscuits and pancakes. One day we had lightning strike our power pole, and the next day it caught on fire, and it was close to our barn, which started to burn. I guess Dad was trying to get something out, so we ran into the barn. I remember we were so scared that he would burn in the fire. When Dad finally came out, I had no idea he could run that fast. He was short. He had really short legs, not known for a fast runner. I don't think I even had a bike while we were on the farm, so I had to invent things to do. I spent a lot of time in our large tree, making bows and arrows and slingshots. Mom started me in the first grade at 5 years old because I kept following his sister to school. That's why I graduated high school at 17. I used to get my butt kicked so many times walking home from school. One day, 3 or 4 Mexican kids were beating me up in the field. Gran must have seen what was happening, and here she came to save me, running across the field. Mom and Dad always told me to defend myself, and I remember this neighbor kid kept beating me up. And that particular day, he bloodied me up pretty good. Mind you, I had just got beat up. She asked who did it, so we got in the car and drove to this kid's house. Mind you, this kid was twice as big as me, even without... Gran went and knocked on the door and told this kid's mother to send her son out to fight me. She was reluctant to do so Gran was going to fight her if she didn't send him out, so she did. Well, he came out and we went at it. I totally got my butt kicked, but I never quit. Some people think that was terrible for Mom to do, but they were from the old school, and I learned a lesson that day, not to bully, but always to defend yourself. I think I'll stop there. I'm not a bully, but I always defend myself. And sometimes you have to be aggressive to defend yourself.